My daughter's baby monitor captured her whispering to someone I couldn't see. At first, I thought it was her imagination. But then the voice spoke back and it knew my name. If you like this story, please subscribe and like to support more chilling horror tales. I should have known something was wrong the moment Lily started talking to her baby monitor. She was only 3 years old, barely old enough to form coherent sentences, yet every night she whispered into it. At first it seemed innocent, just the imaginings of a lonely child. But within a few days, I began to notice subtle details that made my skin crawl. It began with her laughter. Quiet at first, almost mischievous. "Okay. See you later," she would say. "He says hi." I assumed she was talking to an imaginary friend. Every parent goes through it, right? A harmless phase. But there was something different about the way she said it, and something terrifying about the way the monitor responded. One night I walked into her room to check on her. The monitor lay on the nightstand, its little green light glowing faintly. I had unplugged it hours earlier to charge it, yet there it was, faintly humming, softly transmitting her voice back to me and something else. A low, smooth voice, almost melodic, but with an undertone that made my blood run cold. "Hello, Lily," it said. "Did you tell Mommy I'm here?" I froze. My heart dumped so hard I thought it would burst. I whispered Lily's name, telling her to go to sleep. She didn't respond. She kept giggling softly, whispering to the empty monitor, her tiny lips moving without pause. Then the voice said something else, words that pierced through my very being. "Mommy, you're very pretty tonight." I stumbled backward, gripping the doorframe, unsure if I was going to vomit or scream. I looked around the room. The crib was empty of shadows except hers, yet I could feel a presence in awareness, intelligent, patient, almost sentient. My own breath came in ragged gasps as I realized something truly horrifying. The voice wasn't just responding to Lily, it knew me. The next day, I tried to rationalize everything. Sleep deprivation, my imagination, maybe some sort of prank. But nothing could explain the evidence. I recorded the monitor on my phone. Playback confirmed what I feared. The voice repeated everything, phrased things in ways that no child could. It mimicked thoughts I had never spoken aloud, referred to intimate details, and always called me Mommy. Over the next few days, strange things began happening in her room. Shadows twisted unnaturally along the walls, always near the corners. The toys she left on the floor were moved slightly, sometimes stacked or flipped over. The mobile spun at times when there was no breeze. I even found small handprints on the window, tinny, human-like but impossibly high for Lily to reach. My chest would tighten whenever I noticed these changes. I started sleeping beside her crib, flashlight trembling in my hand. Max, our old golden retriever, began growling at empty corners. Fur bristled, eyes wide and glowing faintly in the dark. Max had never growled, not even at strangers. Now he reacted to something that shouldn't exist, something intelligent and malevolent. I began researching. Perhaps there was a scientific explanation. Electromagnetic interference. Static, brain waves amplified through the monitor, but none of it added up. The monitor was unplugged. There were no signals, yet the voice persisted. It wasn't technological. It was alive. One night, I sat beside the crib, phone recording, flashlight in hand. Lily whispered softly, "Do you like my new friend?" And then it spoke back, the same smooth, chilling voice, low and deliberate. "I do, Lily, but she belongs to me now." My body went cold. Max growled even louder, pacing back and forth, hackles raised. I wanted to scream, to run, to pick up Lily and escape the house forever, but I couldn't leave. The entity wasn't just speaking. It was testing boundaries, probing for fear, learning how I would respond. It was patient, intelligent, and horrifyingly methodical. The nights became unbearable. I barely slept, checking the monitor every 15 minutes, listening for whispers. I began noticing patterns. The voice would always speak after Lily giggled or whispered. It mimicked tones, mirrored syllables, then injected phrases that only an adult could understand. Sometimes, it would comment on my clothing, my hair, my actions during the day. I felt constantly watched. One night, I awoke to a faint, metallic scraping sound. My heart raced. Max growled low, standing rigid at the foot of the crib. The monitor, unplugged, lay silent, but I could hear the voice. Distorted, layered, whispering my name over and over. Mommy, mommy, mommy. I grabbed Lily, holding her tight, tears streaming. Her giggles turned into muffled laughs as she clung to me, completely unaware of the horror surrounding her. I dared not look at the monitor, and yet I could feel the presence pressing in, suffocating, malevolent. The next morning, I attempted to speak to someone, anyone, about it. Friends dismissed me, claiming exhaustion, overwork, imagination. A neighbor, an older man who had worked as a technician, glanced at me strangely. Some things follow children, he said softly. Some voices aren't friendly. You can't stop them. You just survive it. Survive it. The words echoed in my mind for days, and every night, the whispers returned. I realized the entity didn't need the monitor, was merely a conduit, a tool to communicate, a gateway to something else. By the end of the first week, my nerves were frayed. Shadows seemed to linger longer than normal. I noticed furniture shifting slightly. The air grew heavier in her room. Lily's giggles sounded off. Not childish, not innocent, but taunting, as if she knew far more than she should. One night, I pressed record again, hoping for evidence, praying to understand. Lily whispered into the monitor, "Mommy, he's hiding. He likes you." The voice answered immediately, "Yes, Mommy, he's always here, watching." Max growled fiercely, lunging at the corner near her crib, fur standing on end. My hands shook violently as I realized something I couldn't deny. The entity wasn't just observing, it was alive, intelligent, and patient, and it had chosen Lily as its conduit. I spent hours that night, holding her, rocking her to sleep, whispering reassurances I didn't believe myself. I knew the voice would return. I knew it would speak. And deep down, I realized something even worse. It knew my name, my routines, my fears, and it was just waiting, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. After the first week of whispers, my life became a nightmare I couldn't escape. Sleep was no longer restful, it was a gamble, a chance for the entity to creep into my mind while I was most vulnerable. Every night, Lily's voice carried a soft, childlike giggle through the monitor, and every night, the low, smooth voice answered, perfectly mimicking an adult's tone but carrying an edge of menace that chilled me to the bone. At first, I thought I might be imagining things. Exhaustion could play tricks on the mind, but the proof was everywhere. Objects moved in her room when no one was there. The mobile above her crib spun without a breeze. Stuffed animals were repositioned. Blankets shifted. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls. And the voice always called me by name. "Mommy, why are you scared?" it asked one night. I froze. My blood ran cold. The words weren't coming from the monitor alone. They echoed in the room, bouncing off the walls, brushing my ears like icy fingers. Max growled, low and threatening, facing the corner of the room. I followed his gaze. There was nothing there, nothing I could see, but I felt the presence. Intelligent, patient, and waiting. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was electromagnetic interference. Perhaps some sort of audio feedback. Maybe I had triggered a technical anomaly. But every attempt to unplug the monitor, move it, or disable it, failed. The whispers followed. Even without the device, the voice found a way to reach me, slipping into my ears, my mind, my perception. I started recording everything on multiple devices. Phone, tablet, spare baby monitors. I thought maybe, if I documented it, I could prove I wasn't insane. That was a foolish hope. The footage was impossible. Shadows moved against the flow of light, curving around corners where no light could reach. Objects shifted on their own, flying inches at a time. And layered over all of it, unmistakably, was the voice, whispering my name, mocking me, testing my limits. I reached out to a retired neighbor, Mr. Halston, a former technician who had lived in the area for decades. He looked at me carefully when I described the events. Some things follow children, he said quietly. Some voices aren't friendly. You can't stop them. You just survive it. Survive it. The words haunted me. Every night, they echoed in my mind as the entity continued its relentless testing. I realized that it wasn't merely observing Liliet was learning. Every pattern, every inflection, every movement, it memorized. It was intelligent, methodical, and patient beyond human comprehension. The voice grew bolder. It started describing my day in detail, recounting thoughts I hadn't spoken aloud. It whispered cryptic phrases. Mummy, come closer. I want to see you, Mommy. He likes your hair. Mommy, do you want to play? Max reacted violently. He barked, growled, and even lunged at the shadows that twisted unnaturally across the room. But it was no ordinary threat. The shadows didn't hesitate. They swirled, coiled, and retreated only when Max barked. I realized he wasn't protecting Lily from me. He was protecting her from whatever lived in the darkness. I began noticing other patterns. The whispers were timing themselves. They came just as I was about to relax, just as I closed my eyes, as if the entity knew exactly when to strike fear. The monitor flickered on and off without power, displaying static that seemed almost alive, a distortion in reality itself. The whispers formed words that weren't always coherent but carried intent, a message that I couldn't yet understand. It started leaking into the rest of the house. I would hear faint murmurs in the hallway while cooking, or a low, smooth voice when I was in the bathroom, alone. My paranoia grew unbearable. I stopped going to other rooms at night. I stopped talking to anyone about it. I felt trapped, as if the entity had woven itself into the fabric of my life, into our home, into my mind. One night, I awoke to find the monitor flickering by itself. The whisper was soft but distinct, and this time, it was not directed at Liliet, was directed at me. Mommy, look behind you. My heart leaped into my throat. I spun around. Nothing. Max growled and backed up. Fur bristled. The room was dark, the crib silent. I felt a cold, icy draft sweep past my neck, and a whisper brushed my mind. She's mine, Mommy. You can't protect her. I realized with horror that this wasn't a game. The entity didn't need the monitor. It had found a way to communicate directly, to reach us through perception, shadows, and sound. It wasn't just in Lily's room. It was in my house, in my mind. The fear began to consume me. Every creak of the house became amplified. Every flicker of the lights, every rustle of the sheets, every soft giggle of Lily's felt like the entity testing me, pushing me closer to panic. Max refused to leave her side. He was always alert, growling at invisible corners, snarling at shadows. I began to believe he was the only one capable of sensing the entity's true form. Sleep became a stranger. My body weakened, my mind frayed, and yet the whispers continued. Multiple layers now, overlapping voices, sometimes calling me by name, sometimes teasing, sometimes instructing Lily in ways I didn't understand. By the end of the week, I knew that the entity wasn't just intelligent, it was strategic. It was studying me, Lily, our home, our patterns. It wanted control, patience, fear. It wanted to test how far it could manipulate us without being seen, and I knew, with a cold certainty, that this was only the beginning. By the time the third week rolled around, I could barely think straight. I hadn't slept properly in days. Every night, the entity grew bolder, the whispers more intelligent, more teasing, and more terrifying. It didn't just call me mommy anymore, it taunted me, played games with my mind, commenting on my thoughts, my hair, my clothes, my routines. It had learned my fears, my weaknesses, my patterns. I realized that confrontation was inevitable. I needed to see it, to document it, to survive it. I set up every device I could. Multiple cameras, baby monitors, my phone, motion sensors, and even audio recorders in every room. I wasn't sure if these tools would protect me or make it worse. At precisely 3:11 a.m., the first whisper came. Lily, still asleep in her crib, murmured softly into her monitor. "Mommy, he's here." I froze. The monitor flickered to life, even though it had been unplugged for hours. Max growled, low and menacing, hackles raised, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The air in the room grew thick, heavy, suffocating, and I could feel a presence pressing into my chest, and then it spoke. "Hello, Mommy. I've been waiting." The voice was everywhere at once. It echoed from the monitor, bounced off the walls, and reverberated in my own head. I could feel its awareness, sharp, intelligent, patient. Shadows twisted unnaturally across the walls, curling and stretching like living smoke. The crib rattled slightly, and the air grew colder, icy tendrils brushing my skin. I grabbed Lily, holding her tight. Max pressed close, growling fiercely, teeth bared, staring at corners where I could see nothing. But the shadows moved independently, defying physics, swirling with intent. Objects in the room, soft toys, blankets, even the mobile moved of their own accord. Tossed lightly into the air, I screamed, "Leave her alone." The voice laughed, a sound that crawled under my skin, echoing in ways that made my chest tighten and my stomach churn. "She belongs to me, and so do you." The shadows thickened, coiling around the corners, stretching along the ceiling, crawling along the floor like liquid darkness. The entity didn't just want fear, it wanted control, dominance. Every whisper, every subtle movement, every faint giggle from Lily's lips was part of its game. I bolted, carrying Lily, Max running beside us. The shadows seemed to follow, flowing along the walls, stretching impossibly, moving faster than I could comprehend. The air pressed against me like water, making each step a struggle. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The voice followed, layered, overlapping, taunting. "Run, Mommy, but I will find you." I burst out of the front door, the icy night air slapping my face, the shadows dissipating at the threshold. I didn't stop. I ran down the street, past neighbors' houses, past parked cars, until I could barely see the house in the distance. But even then, I could hear it faintly soft, insidious, omnipresent. Over the next days, I tried to return to normal life. But nothing was normal. The monitor still flickered occasionally, even unplugged. The whispering still seeped through, faint but unmistakable. "Mommy, I know your name." Max refused to leave my side. He stayed alert at all times, growling at empty corners, warning me that the presence still lingered. And sometimes, late at night, I would catch the shadows stretching unnaturally along walls. Even in a new house, even miles away, I realized the horrifying truth. The entity wasn't limited by space. It had learned patience, cunning, intelligence, and it had embedded itself into our lives. It didn't need the monitor, it used it as a conduit. Yes, but it could reach us in ways I couldn't understand. It was everywhere, yet nowhere, always patient, always waiting. I consulted paranormal experts, psychics, and spiritual advisors. Some suggested cleansing rituals, protection talismans, prayers, but all admitted the same thing. Entities like this were intelligent, patient, persistent. You couldn't destroy them. You could only survive them. And even then, survival was temporary. I learned to live with it, in constant vigilance. The moment Lily giggled in her sleep, my pulse raced. Every flicker of light, every shadow moving in the corner of my eye, sent my heart hammering. Max became a constant protector, never leaving her side. I slept little, always holding the monitor, recording, listening, guarding, and still, the whispers came. "Mommy, I'm still here. Mommy, I know your name." Even when I moved, changed houses, changed cities, the entity persisted. I can feel it in the corners of my vision, in the darkness behind closed doors, in the static of any monitor, any screen. It waits, patient, intelligent, and malevolent. Lily sleeps peacefully, unaware of the horror she carries with her. And yet I know that one day, it will return. And when it does, I'll hear my name whispered in the darkness. And this time, I don't know if I or anyone can survive it.